Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If this is your first time stopping in, I'm Randy Sweevel, and if you like Mustangs, you're in the right channel. So this video, we are gonna build the Boss 302 motor. It's close to being all original, but it's still not. We'll go through that when we get there. But just a little update, pace car is still getting worked on. If you're here for that, I'm making a specific video for it. We did quite a bit more to it than I planned. And that's where that sits, still waiting on the rack. And once the rack comes, the video will be out, put it that way. The Clevor, the one that everyone wants to see mainly from my channel, from what I've gathered, we are working on this today. We're putting the interior in it. As you can see, the seat's getting mounted. Right now we're mounting the shifter, putting the console in, putting the other seat in, making the back braces for the seats, and steering column brace. So that's coming along good. We're literally working on that right now. 82 is on standstill until I get other projects done, along with the 81. 72 is probably gonna sit there for a couple more years, to be honest. I don't got time. I'm trying to get the nicer projects done first. So today we're gonna be building the motor for this. 70 fastback, not a real Boss, making it as close to a Boss as I can just because I've always wanted one. And I just don't feel like spending that much money to have a real one. So maybe we'll get this one done, sell it for pretty good money, and then fork out the rest for a real one. We'll see. 93, we're making that back to original. I have a video that's almost done for that. And then the one we painted is just sitting there. I might buy a full tilt and boogie kit for the IRS, powder coat the IRS, make it as nice as I can. And yeah, that's just a little bit that's going on. And today I'm gonna flip the camera around and show you what we're gonna be doing. Sum it up, I'm building a 302 Boss motor. A lot of parts are 1970 actual Boss parts. We'll go through them and I'll show you what's not and why I didn't do that. So let's go through that now. All right, here's the block we'll be using. It is a roller block, so it's 86 and up. And it's a XXX block. The reason I didn't use an OEM Boss block is, for one, they're expensive, and two, they're always, everyone you see for sale has an issue. So we took a roller block, made it look like a Boss block, had those machine shop do those for me. It's bored 30 over. And then for pistons, we have TRW 30 over, so they're authentic Boss pistons. And then the rods, we have 289 rods, which the Boss used. These aren't hypo rods though, but we did put the bigger bolts in them, so they're the same thing essentially. And crankshaft is the stock out of the roller motor. We just made it work, which was a lot. We had to add a lot of mallet, as you can see, because these pistons are really heavy. So piston rings, we're just using regular stuff. Heads, they aren't Boss 302 heads, but they're essentially the same thing now. They're 351 4-barrel heads. So those will be on this. Original Boss 302 valve covers, original Boss 302 1970 manifolds. And then the intake is still over there. That is original. So essentially it's original pistons, rods, and manifolds, valve covers. The things we didn't use but look original: crankshaft is just as strong, heads basically the same thing, and yeah, I think I don't know if I missed anything, but we're going to use a comp cams. That's a reproduction of the Boss 302 cam, but it's a roller, so it's more reliable with oils nowadays. So that's a little summary of it. If it interests you, you can stick around and watch. We're gonna be putting the rings in, checking the gap, putting them on the pistons, pounding the pistons in, and then get the crankshaft mounted. So we're gonna essentially have a short block today, hopefully, or even if I go get some head gaskets, throw the heads on too. So that's what we'll be going through this video, and let's get started. All right, guys, I got it all set up. So get your piston ring, slide it in, Gonna be gapping the rings first. They might be right, but you don't know. Then you just grab a piston, carefully push it down. I always go to the last groove so you know that it's flush, and then you gotta make sure that it's level all the way around. So you know the piston ring is level in the cylinder. And then you take your feeler gauge, you check the gap, and whatever the gap is, you look it up to see if it's within spec or the tolerance. And if it is, then you don't have to grind it. And if it's not, then you have to grind it with a ring grinder. These ones are already looking pretty thick, so I don't think I'll have to grind them. We are at 15 thou. So I'm gonna look it up, see if it's within spec. I know the specs in my 03 Cobra Vert, that's a race car. I don't build stock motors much, especially NA. So I'm gonna look that up and see if it's within spec. If it is, I'm gonna go through all of them. You have to check all of them, and you leave the rings in the cylinder that you checked, because every cylinder might be off 1,000th. It's that specific, so leave the rings in there, check them all, see if they're all the same. I'm gonna throw them all in there and check them all, and then see if it's within spec. It's just whatever you prefer, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, so I got the rings gapped. The bottom one is 16th thousandths, and the top one is 20 thousandths. I thought it was 15, but the 16 one slid in there. So 16 and 20, which I looked on the internet and they say that's perfect. You want 4,000th for the first ring for every inch bore. Well, this is a 4-inch bore, so that'd be 16. And then 5 times the inch of the bore, so that'd be 20. So we're spot on, and we're gonna start putting the rings on the pistons. And before you do that, you always check. These are older pistons, so just check all the way around it to make sure that there's no little nicks, and if there is, file them down so the rings don't get caught. But we're gonna throw the rings on there and then start sliding the pistons in. All right, guys, I got 7 of them done. I wanted to show you guys how easy it is. Oil rings the easiest. You literally, it won't break. Just try not to hit the edges on the sides, nick up the sides. Put the middle in first, find where it stops, make sure you don't line up. Do the same thing with this one, go down one groove at a time. The oil ones are the easiest. Follow it around. Just like that. On the top. And this will pinch the oil, so my end's there and there, so I'm gonna put this one over here. Just like that. And then you take the rings out of the cylinder. And then you'll see, see that one says top on it? It's hard to see. You'll see it says top on it, barely, might not have focused, but. So that's the top of it. Put it in your ring tool, stretch it out. Go down to the second one, just like that. Should spin pretty free like this. If it doesn't, take it off and check. You might have to use a file like this, clean off any burrs. Take the top ring out of your block now. Some top rings will have a top too. There might be a dot, it might say top. You just have to look at the instruction sheet. This one doesn't matter on the top. put that in here. Go on the opposite side of the gap on the second one. And there you go, see how they spin? That one's done. Now, all the pistons have the rings, they're all checked. So they're all ready to go in. And then I also numbered all of them, so you know what rings went to what cylinders. So those are all done. And now we're gonna put the crankshaft in, check the bearing tolerances with a plastic gauge. Once the crank's in, then we're gonna drop these down the cylinders and bolt them down. So that's where we're at right now. So let's get the crank in. All right guys, got all the pistons off, put them in order. Got the main caps off, put the main bearings in. The 402, the oil slots in the middle. I think you can't mess it up because the tangs are in a certain spot, I believe. Otherwise it's common sense. Thrust washer is in the middle on a Ford 302. So we're gonna start setting these in. And before you set the crank in, you always wanna lube the bearings. So we're gonna do that now and then set the crank in. You only lube the bottom though, not the top, because the top's gonna have the plastic gauge to check the tolerance. So I'm gonna get this bolted down, have the crank in, and I'll show you the next step. All right, got the crank set in. Before you set the crank in, no matter where you got it from, spray some carb cleaner, brake clean, whatever you use. All these, clean everything up because there's gonna be a little dirt, dust in there. When you set it down, go very slow so you don't hurt anything. And your first instinct's gonna wanna spin it, but you can't yet because we got a plastic gauge all these. And that one just happened to be straight up, same with that one. I should have looked better at that, so we'll have to go off to the side a little bit, which isn't a big deal, but would have been easier to turn it a little bit. But anyways, we're gonna put some plastic gauge on. You cut it up really small, set them on there, and then you torque everything down, and you gotta take it off carefully so you don't mess it up, and then you measure it with these little gauges. So I'm gonna do that next, and then I'll show you the reading. All right guys, just got the main caps back off. So I'll show you for the guys that don't know what this stuff looks like. If I still have it over here. We'll open this one quick. So when you open this one's kind of flat, but see the stuff in the middle? It's kind of like, I wouldn't say Play-Doh, but kind of like the same stuff, but it's harder. And this is how you check it. You see that's at 2,000. Factory spec says be around 15, so this is a little looser, which is better for a high performance engine. They're all uniform, which they should be. So that's a good sign. So now we'll take some carb cleaner, spray it on a little towel, clean that off, lube it, put the main caps on, retorque it, the crank will be done. And then next we'll do the same thing, same procedure on the rods. So it's really tedious. This video is going quick, but it does take quite a bit of time. So I'm gonna get the main caps all bolted down and then we'll go from there. There it is, got them all torqued back down and lubed up. Spins nice and free, no bind. Spins pretty easy, not really easy, but pretty easy. So now I'll pound one piston in at a time, check the plastic gauge. I like to do the two together so the rods stay where they should, not kink, like off center a little bit. So I'll put two in at a time, plastic gauge them, check them, and then it should go pretty quick. All right guys, moving on. I forgot to film these ones, but I have this one. You can see it's about the same as what the mains were, 2000s. Might be a little bit looser. So that's good, but you'll notice I only have one in here. I was tightening the ring compressor, put this piston in. I heard a snap, which I thought was weird, so I took it apart. The damn ring broke. So now I gotta order some new rings. I have no idea why I did that. I asked the guy that's here and he said I might have overstretched it, putting it on with the tool. Sometimes you can do that. It's all about building motors, you run into stuff like that. So I wanna put the rest in, order some new rings, and then we'll have to regrind this ring to what that spec was, and then get that in. So short block would have been done today, but that's what happens. So I'm gonna finish up putting the other, 5 pistons? Yeah, 5 in and call it a day. One more thing I wanna show you guys before I get too far is see the rod? See how there's one side that has a bigger gap than the other? Like a beveled edge? That goes towards the crankshaft. It's for oiling to get rid of it. So make sure you do that. You can see the difference. So another little thing to look for. The flat side goes towards the rod, beveled side towards the crank. Another thing for you guys, I don't know how many of you are new to this. That's called a tang. You always put tang to tang. So this is gonna go this way. You should have knew that anyway because it's a beveled edge, but it's gonna go on tang to tang. That's how they all go. Same with the main bearings. So these are torqued to 35 foot-pounds, unless you use a stretch gauge. I always just use Torx, because these are the ARP kit to make these hypo rod. So these are just standard 289 rods. You upgrade that, it's technically a hypo rod. So I'm gonna keep going and get them done. I just wanted to inform you guys, just in case you're new to building and you're building your first one, that you look for those two also. All right guys, got the short block all put together. The piston came in, so I threw it in the other day. So that's in, so the short block is complete. It's been a few days, got the head gaskets in. I already opened one, see how they fit. Got the heads here. If you're doing this project at home and want to use 351 4-barrel heads, you have to machine the coolant passage on both sides on the bottom. So those are flat, and then you got to drill a coolant passage only in the front. If I remember right, there was a bigger one. You got to get it all down and do a small little thing for the intake for your thermostat. So those are there. So now the heads aren't symmetrical anymore. This is the front and that's the front. So they're per side now. So if you're doing this at home, that's what you have to do. And also one of the intake bolts aren't gonna work. We tried to tap it in, but it didn't work. So I'm gonna have to just JB weld the bolt there just for looks. It's not gonna be functional. So right now we're gonna throw the heads on and have a long block. All right guys, got a long block. I just have the intake setting on there. Something that looks funny that I had to do some research. These little holes are on both sides. The factory, say a 351 Cleveland, would have like little tubes coming off there for the carburetor for heat. I thought that we should have filled these in, but I did some research and Boss heads even have them, so they must have been lazy on the casting. So I guess those just have holes there. Kind of looks funny, but I guess once it's all together, you probably don't see them anyway. But anyways, it's together. I think I'm gonna wheel it over to the shop now and start painting it blue so it doesn't rust any more than it already has. And once it's painted blue, it'll look a lot better. And then once we get the motor pulled out, then I can put the oil pan and the accessories on it. I'm gonna use all of them out of the car because the date code's D0, which is 1970, so it'll all match what it should be. So that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna wheel this over and get it painted. All right, guys, got it all taped up, cleaned up. The end video is kind of boring. You will notice I taped this engine up way more than I usually do on the previous engines that we built. This motor cost probably 3 times more than a regular 302 that I've built. So I'm kind of more specific with this motor. And let's get it real, we're building the Boss clone. So taped it up pretty good. We're about to spray it. It should turn out pretty good. All right, guys, got the camo shooken up. We're gonna use Old Ford blue, a darker blue, the newer stuff is lighter. There we go. All right, guys, got it all sprayed. Turned out awesome. Looks good. Now when it dries tomorrow, I'll start putting the valve covers on, maybe set the intake on, see what it looks like. But anyways, we're gonna end this video here. We're gonna have 2 parts to this just because we're waiting on parts, we're waiting on the cam. I'm gonna have to pull the motor out of the Boss for the front. So all that's gonna take a while. So this is part 1. We pretty much put it together. The rest of the stuff's fairly easy, bolt stuff on. So hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, I can let you guys know how to do this if you wanna do it. I know there's a lot of research, but it's pretty hard to find what you're looking for. I know from experience. So if you're trying to do one of these projects, just let me know and I can send you some advice and on how to do it. And anyways, let me know what you guys think so far and how the build's coming. So if you haven't yet, like and subscribe. Helps me out a lot. And see you in the next one.